Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Hear ye, young and old. The Promoter 101 podcast is now in session. Overseeing the proceedings is the Honorable Steiny and W. Luke Pierce.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. This is a special episode of Promoter 101. We're joined today by Fly South Music's Randy Nichols, talking about artist management and the troubles facing the ticketing world.
Excited about Randy Nichols being on the podcast, Luke. We got to spend an exorbitant amount of time with him in Colorado as I got stuck driving up the mountain from DIA to Aspen and spent the whole time talking ticketing with him. He's extraordinary. Watched him moderate the ticketing panel. He's got a lot going on. And in this interview, you guys really kind of dove deep into some of those current issues going on in the ticketing world. Really solid interview. I'm excited about this one. We got news of the week and a very special Pollstar Live preview with Waddell talking to us about all the surprises coming this year to the big music industry live conference in California. I think West Hollywood this year, actually, at the old Lowe's Hotel just down the street from the Hollywood Bowl, my friend.
Right around the corner, coming up in a few weeks. Make sure you get registered. Pollstar.live.
The Promoter 101 podcast starts right now.
This is John Schultz. I'm Windish.
Charlie from Crescent Ballroom.
Craig Newman.
Dave Brooks.
Dave Ratner.
John Holiday.
Ted Becknell.
LX.
Imong Shah.
Elliot Lefko.
Gerald B. Henley.
Harlan Fry here. Jack Ross.
Jason Miller.
Jeffrey Fox. Joe Escalante.
Blair LeBlanc. Martin Atkins.
Neil Dixon.
Nick Farkas. Paula Palazzo.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101!
There's a bunch of Promoter 101 episodes available. Actually, Luke, all of them are available. You can get them at promoter101.com.net or anywhere that you get your podcasts from.
And of course, we're always in the conversation online. You should come join us on X. This show is at Promoter 101. I'm at W. Luke Pierce. Dan is at The Jew. Over on Instagram, the show's at Steiny Promoter 101. Dan's at Dan Presents, and I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
Reach out. Feel free to hit us up with your ideas and questions at steiny@promoter101.net.
Hey, this is Rob Zaffarelli.
Patty Ann Tarleton.
Paul Lore. Phil Rodriguez.
Rick Greenstein.
Donatas Nachayos.
Drew Pellet. Rich Mills.
Sasha Bombaji.
Seth Hurwitz. Steve Martin.
Whitney Bond.
This is Trip Brown. Wayne Forte.
Steve Zapp.
Trevor Solomon.
Live on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Luke, what's going on with the news?
Dan, a couple of big things happened this past month. So on our last podcast, we covered all the wonderful news about the nominations for the Grammys. Let's reset and talk about what actually mattered. The 68th Grammy Awards held this February 1st at Crypto.com in Los Angeles. Big picture. This year's Grammys were a little less about shock and wins and more about the consolidation of power in recorded music business. There were three big themes that I noticed. Superstar dominance remained intact. 2, genre walls continuing to dissolve. And 3, the Recording Academy actively positioned itself in the AI era as something that still is meaningful. Rather than one runaway sweep, the awards were distributed across established multi-platinum global acts, hip-hop and R&B artists with strong cultural leverage, genre-fluid pop stars with global streaming strength, and Latin and international crossover performers. The Academy this year decided to vote and lean towards commercially viable, globally scaled artists, but avoided the perception of this mainstream capitulation that's happened in the past. There wasn't really any industry upset. This disrupted the revenue numbers this year. Winners were already top-tier earners, and that tells you something. The Grammys probably isn't so much about discovery, it's about reinforcement. On the viewership side, CBS and Paramount Plus saw modest year-over-year growth in total audience with strong streaming engagement on the days after. The telecast was one of the few music events that can still generate real-time cultural conversation, immediate streaming spikes, and international sync leverage. Streaming bumps post-win ranged meaningfully across all the catalogs, especially in legacy categories and tribute performances. Performances had some production that carried some weight from live musicianship and cross-genre collaborations. The Academy is clearly signaling that it's in an era of collaboration. Several of the performances were structured clearly for TikTok replay value, DSP playlist, and tour announcement tie-ins. Seems to be the modern Grand Prix formula. Shows less about trophies, more about marketing cycles, Dan. Dan, did you tune in, watch any of the Grammys here? Did you see any of the tribute performances there at the end?
I watched the entire Grammys and thought it was an excellent night of entertainment. I start with the red carpet because I live with a college-age daughter and of course, wife that both care more about the fashion than probably the music. So we start with the red carpet on E, move over and see the monologue, and I thought Trevor Noah was excellent. I love him in the crowd, in the middle of all the celebrities, working them all into the conversation, and he seems to be able to say whatever he wants and get great, honest responses in a playful Peter Pan kind of boyish way from some of the biggest stars in the world. No one gets offended with how he brings them into the conversation, and they all play along, which is what you want. And sadly, it sounded like this was his last and final Grammys, that CBS is losing the Grammys to another platform. They didn't really say where it was going, but it sounded like this was the end that he announced. This is his last time hosting because CBS isn't going to have it next year.
It's his final time hosting for sure, right?
But he said it was his final time hosting because CBS is losing it. So I don't think CBS was going to promote where it's going.
Sure.
I think maybe it's going to another platform. So, because obviously the Grammys aren't going away.
No, there'll be a 69th Grammy Awards next year, I'm sure. No, it will not air on CBS. You're right here. It's going to move to Disney, apparently. ABC.
Which is ABC, okay.
Yeah. They got a new 10-year deal starting in 2027.
Okay, and that's, huge award show to switch over. So the star powers is massive. So the deal must have been very lucrative.
Yeah, no doubt. That's at the end of a 50-year era for CBS hosting the Grammys. They've had them since 1973.
The award shows, yeah, they were always catalysts for all the big ones. So see if that changes stuff for, the Oscars and the other big Golden Globes.
Yeah, I was blown away by the In Memoriam segment. Lauryn Hill actually showing up for a performance, which is incredible. But the group from Andrew Watt and Chad Smith and Post Malone doing the Ozzy tribute, over to the D'Angelo tribute with Warren Hill and Wyclef, and basically the food.
Star loaded. Yeah, they did a great job with that.
Fantastic end to that show.
Yeah, it was excellent.
Yes.
Absolutely excellent. Great show all the way around. Did it move any records? Did it sell any tickets for anybody? I don't know that it does that any more than did the Super Bowl change anybody's opinion of Bad Bunny. It's like, may have introduced some people, but I think it just more got younger people to tune into the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And Kid Rock obviously made some hay with his competing show and some backlash, because anywhere Kid Rock's going to go, there's going to be some backlash.
That's very true. I like not to talk about the Super Bowl halftime and the alternative Super Bowl halftime shows here, Dan, but we're more than happy to talk about it.
I mean, I'm a fan of Bob's. Like, whether you like him or you hate him, you got to acknowledge that he is a top tier entertainer and he likes to stir the pot. I'm not 100% sure when he stirs the pot, he's not just keeping himself relevant, but people bite. He is absolutely clickbait for a big part of America.
No doubt he is. I think what's maybe most unfortunate about all that is that the Lee Brice performance, the selection of the song. I love Lee Brice. I mean, he's, I don't know how many number ones in country music now, but the decision to song about drive my truck, drink my beer, wear my boots is just the most meaned country thing. It's like a Bo Burnham bit. So regardless of what you think of the production of that, the song choice for Lee Brice seemed relatively concerning for his staging career at this point.
I love that you're referencing Bo Burnham. I literally just referenced Bo Burnham in a conversation with Elodie 15 minutes before we started the podcast recording.
Who was also up for a Grammy. Another piece of news here that's impacting the world of the music business. The Department of Justice released another tranche of the Epstein files this week, and one of the named emails was the head of Wasserman, Casey Wasserman, who in 2003, as a 27-year-old, exchanged a number of emails with Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted sex offender and associate of Jeffrey Epstein. Well, let me just say, there's been no confirmed, substantiated reporting tying Casey Wasserman to any criminal activity related to Jeffrey Epstein. Like a ton of prominent business and political figures, Casey's name has appeared in broader media cycles around some social proximity questions, but there are no formal allegations, charges, findings of wrongdoing involving him in the Epstein criminal case. Very important that we make a difference between that and being mentioned in document dumps and appearing in social circles and being accused of misconduct and being charged with the crime. There's no verified news story alleging wrongdoing by Casey Wasserman connected to the Epstein case. The back and forth was a raunchy suggestion of some meetups in New York, and it spawned a outcry from many of the music clients inside of his agency, prompting major artists like Chappell Roan and Wise Blood and Dropkick Murphys to drop the agency, stating that they would no longer be a part of an agency where Wasserman was the head of this. Wasserman, who was also the head of the LA 28 Olympic Committee, said that he was going to be selling the agency. He still owns 40% of it, with his 60% of it owned by Providence Equity Partners out of Providence, Rhode Island, the private equity firm that holds a stake in his company that is rumored to be valued between $1 and $2 billion. As a result, now there's some shakeups in the music world here, Dan. It seems like there's some artists that are going some ways. Sure, this week there was some approach from some agencies, some agents leaving here, but left an unfortunate mess for the wonderful staff and culture at the Wasserman music business that represents artists like Coldplay and Ed Sheeran and previously Billie Eilish. But many of the agents that work at this company that had nothing to do with the Epstein files here are now bearing the brunt of some unfortunate emails from 23 years ago by Casey Wasserman. Dan, have you been in touch with anybody at Wasserman this week? What are you hearing on the street about this?
Yeah, I've had some agents reach out. I know you're seeing artists like Chappell Roan jump, and obviously there have been a couple others that have pointed to that. I think it's a different side of the business. Our business is with the agents, right? Whether it's Marty or Andrea or Brent, it's with the guys that we do business with and their client list. And they're all basically independent business people under this bigger umbrella. So I don't tie my business to any one of these agents that happen to be at Wasserman with Casey, who I've never met or talked to. Think the world of his grandfather, huge icon in our business. I don't know Casey. I don't feel like I'm in business with Casey. I feel like I'm in business with the same people that I was in business with at Little Big Man and the agency group and all of the other paradigms and what have you that have all filtered in now, becoming part of the Wasserman agency. But at no time do I feel like any of this attaches to them, and does it affect my business with any of those acts and how I do business, because they're the same people that we've done business with forever, and none of them are involved with any of this stuff or attached to it. So I know some of them called to check in, get a temperature check on me, but they're our friends and they happen to be attached to a brand that's going through a weird moment that is obviously not flattering, but like, they're our friends. We're going to stand by our friends, as they had nothing to do with this and they've always done good business with us.
Yeah, no doubt. I really do have a great deal of sympathy for everyone that works at Wasserman and everything from music to Wasserman Media Group. We've got some counterparties in that we work with. It's just an unfortunate time for have their lives and their businesses upended by some unfortunate emails. It really is quite the shame. I think at the end of the day, Casey made the right decision here to sell his company. I think this would have persisted for quite some time. I mean, they took the steps to remove their client list from their website so that people couldn't be pressured, artists couldn't be pressured to leave the agency, which is a smart interim move. But this would have undoubtedly continued forever until there's any sort of like accountability or justice for the victims of the Epstein crimes. I think this is going to be something that would persist forever. So the decision to sell is the right move. Leave him to focus on other things.
Yeah, it sounded like, he had a falling out with the LA Olympics, and seems like with what's going on globally with Prince Andrew getting arrested and some of the other people involved with their names coming out, like the world is taking this very seriously. And this is a new day of how people are being held accountable. And I think it's a great step. Hopefully it prevents some of these things from ever reoccurring.
Yeah. In news elsewhere, we're continuing to cover the legal battle between Live Nation and the DOJ. The Department of Justice here in the United States continues to morph into one of the most consequential courtroom dramas in the live music business in decades. And the latest developments have both strategic and structural implications for the entire industry, as well as the case it's laid out from. Let's break out what's new in the case, including the judge's latest rulings, some settlement signals, and a massive witness list that's now become public. This week, a federal judge in Manhattan refused to dismiss key components of the DOJ's antitrust lawsuit against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. The judge has allowed the government's claims related to ticketing dominance and venue ties to proceed, while dismissing parts of the complaint related to the concert promotion booking that were weaker on evidentiary grounds. This means the case will move forward. Jury selection is set for March 2nd, 2026. And here's the twist. Live Nation is urging the DOJ to settle. In a public statement right after the judge's ruling, Live Nation's EVP of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs, Dan Wall, said that with some of the claims dismissed, the logic for a structural breakup is diminished, and the company is ready to negotiate a settlement over the issues that remain. Dan Wall argues that the focus should now be on specific practices like long-term ticketing contracts and certain amphitheater policies, rather than wholesale separation of Live Nation and Ticketmaster. The company is even pointing to its 2025 record revenue and continued concert demand as evidence that it remains competitive and sustainable. Dan, do you have any thoughts on this ruling here this week?
I think it was a win. Now, let me be very clear. I haven't talked to anybody internally at the company about this, which is important since I'm technically a Live Nation employee. But I think the narrowing of it's going to simplify a lot of this, and a lot of the stuff that they kicked out was, good stuff to lay to rest. So the simplification of this and the narrowing of it, I think, is just a victory for Live Nation.
So just narrowing this down from the structural breakup to something about, what's the worst case scenario? What is the downside that Live Nation could be looking at in the worst case here?
Luke, I think a lot of this is on the table, and I think it's going to get playing out quicker and quicker at this point. I think you got some serious key components like there, but I think we're going to see this all play out in real time very soon because we're coming into it now.
It certainly is, Dan. March 2nd is right around the corner. By the time this podcast release, will be a mere weeks away from jury selection. And beyond jury selection here, Dan, have you caught a chance on the who's of the witness list here? They have some specific individuals named on the prospective witness list, some live and some by deposition designation, as compiled by some of the filings and trade reporting here. The list of names that came up here of potential witnesses to this case were pretty significant here.
It's like the Billboard Power 100 list is what it looked like, Luke.
I mean, from the Live Nation Ticketmaster side, you had Michael Rapino, Joe Berthold, Jared Smith, Marla Ostroff, David Marcus, Bob Rue, Ben Whedon were on there. Competitor and agency side of things, you had Jay Marciano, Dan Beckerman was on there, Daryl Eaton from CAA, Seth Siegel from WME on there, David Zedek from UTA, Corin Capshaw, Louis Messina, Michael Cole from S2BN, Walter McDonald from the touring company was in there. On the venue side, you got our friend Lori Jacoby in there, Josephine Vaccarello. You had Brian Perez, the CEO of AXS in there. You had Jeff Iannello from SeatGeek. I mean, representation from a lot of people. And of course, on the celebrity side, what wouldn't be a hearing without Kid Rock appearing somewhere, as well as Ben Lovett from Mumford & Sons and the TVG, the venue group, also appearing on here on the celebrity list of things. But it was quite a list of names on there, Dan. Quite the who's who.
I saw Geiger was on there. I also saw Seth Hurwitz was on there. So some of those are pretty big, fun names to watch. I'd love to read through some of that testimony.
It'll be really interesting to see what to watch, who they pull from these witness lists. I mean, if you get Rapino and Berthold and the Ticketmaster execs, get heavy time, it might signal that they're staying focused on some more of the corporate strategy and contract leverage stuff. But if you get, you start to see Marciano and CAA, WME, UTA, they might be talking about, the touring power structure and routing leverage and access and the relational theories that are in that. And then, of course, you have the ticketing folks from SeatGeek and AXS and StubHub and Tixer and Eventum. They're front and center. It's probably about competitive alternatives and foreclosure, what competition could look like. So it'd be really interesting to see who gets pulled from that list. And either way, it'd be really interesting to call some of our friends here that are on this list and see what their perspective was once this case is done.
Hey, it's Mark David,
Steve Strange, Toby Leighton-Pope,
Stuart Galbraith,
Simeon Galperin,
I'm Ralph James.
Ted Cohen.
Julia Frank.
Jeff Goodman,
Jamie Adler, and Frank Wing,
Doug Edley,
David Klein,
Stephen Riff.
Tom Chauncey,
And we're on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
This is a special month where, Luke, we flipped it around and we're going to do the tweets as we announced last month. What's going on in the mind of W. Luke Pierce? Luke, what's on social media? What did you talk about this month?
Absolutely nothing on social media this month. I think that's pretty on brand for me for social media. It's something that I am pretty bad at doing, to be honest. So to all of our loyal listeners out there, I do apologize for it. I don't know what's going to get me off the starting block when it comes down to personal branding on social media, other than the occasional interactions with people online. But I had nothing to contribute to the world of the internet this month, Dan.
I think this is kind of on brand.
Yeah, I think it's pretty on brand for me. You know,
That's going to do it for Tweets of the Week from Luke Pierce. You can follow Luke, Luke Pierce, on social media.
love it.
Hey, this is Brian O'Connell with Live Nation, and we are on Promoter 101.
Every year, Pollstar Live is one of the biggest industry conferences in the world. And here to preview all the happenings that are coming to the Lowe's Hotel in Hollywood, California on April 14th to 16th is the acclaimed rock writer and head of Oakview Group's Pollstar Live conference, Mr. Ray Waddell.
Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good to be back. It's good to see you guys.
Looking forward to making my way back to West Hollywood and doing the grip and grin with everyone. It sounds like you've built quite a schmooze fest this year. What are some of the highlights you're excited about?
Well, for one, we're going to find out what it's like to be in April as a regular event. If you recall, a year ago, we were like 2 weeks out and canceled the February event because historically, 30 years, however, 30 plus years, it was a mid-February event because that was the down cycle in touring, probably the most. And then the fires of LA just threw everybody for a loop. And we just thought so much the business based in LA that we would give everybody a break. And we moved it to the week between the Coachella festivals, right? So those 3 days in the middle of between those two full runs of Coachella Fest. And people liked it, said they liked it. Our feedback was very positive. So we polled people, I guess, internally, people who do that do. And so we came back to the mid-April thing, and registrations are definitely on pace or even above last year. So we think that part of it's going to be good. And I've kind of learned how to work around that because especially on the production day, I booked a lot of tour managers, and so many of them had to leave because if artist steps foot outside, they want their tour manager with them, So I shuffled around all day on that first day. This year, we've made a big change in that we went for a full-on 3 days of Pollstar content, with the first day we're running concurrently with the production content. So we'll still do that all day and have more integration of the primary business with the production folks. And then the Pollstar content on that first day will be marketing, branding, sponsorships, AI kind of focused. And then the regular Pollstar content, that will be the 14th, the first day, and the 2 days, 15th Pollstar Awards, 16th full day content. So 3 full days of mostly concurrent content, schmooze, as you say, and receptions and various other kind of gatherings. But it's been going really well as far as the content goes. That's what I do primarily. I book about 200 speakers, and we got some really cool stuff lined up from that regard all 3 days. I saw Houston Powell speaking this year. Jared Arpa, Dana Franks is coming back. Charles Attal is going to be there. You got Kevin Shivers in the house. Nick Storch is coming in to speak. You've got some serious weight. The legendary Wayne Forte, Thomas Cousins is speaking. Serious movers and shakers speaking this year at the conference. Yeah, I'm real happy with that. This will be like my 35th or 36th, however you want to figure it, conference to program, right? Starting with 13 Billboard touring conferences and 10 of these, and then Venues Now conference. And I did some country music stuff. I did a medium and for touring line of content there. So my thing is don't repeat as much as possible. Don't get, like I hadn't had you in a decade or so. Well, since the Rapino thing, but I try not to have the same people, but some people are good you want them back. And then the last few years, especially on the production day, I worked hard at getting some new faces up there. Since the shutdown, there's been this whole changeover of new people rising up into leadership positions. And a lot of the old timers or the road dogs who kind of invented their line of work of production, right? For arena level and stadium level concerts, and did it for 30, 40 years. A lot of them found out you can go home and have a dog and insurance and shit like that. And they never came back to the road. Or they work for somebody locally or just do contract work. And that's given the opportunity for a whole new generation to rise up into these tour manager, production manager, lighting director type of positions. And I'm really impressed with a lot of them. They work real hard and motivated, and it's more diverse. A lot of faces you wouldn't have seen out there 15, 20 years, even 10 years ago. So that's been kind of fun to me to focus on that and to integrate those two parts of the business, the ones who go out and make the shows happen and the ones who plan the shows, the agents, managers, promoters who sit in the office, and the people who are out on the road who have to do what they dream up. I try to get them on panels together a lot that you didn't normally see because they don't talk a lot. Tour manager and agent hardly ever talk. So that blew my mind, but they should because who's got to actually execute it, you know? I'm focused on that a little bit. And then there's the big names you want to see, you know, the people I haven't had in all these years or in years, like I haven't announced them yet, but like Rick Roskin and Kirk Summer on the same panel should be fun. You know, two co-heads of they're two of the largest agencies. You know, there's challenges. Some of these agencies have had some developments that I don't necessarily have to go into. We don't know what they're going to be called by the time we come to the actual event. I'm glad we don't have to print our actual schedule anymore. It's all online, so I don't have to worry about getting the wrong name down for any of these companies. But they're all holding steady, and it's a whole lot of them. They came to me with some great ideas, and I'm getting more of that than I ever did. You know, people being proactive with ideas you've done that, you know, ideas for content, and it either fits into something I want to do or it's a completely new idea, and we make it work. So I'm real happy. I'll count it up today. I got about 120 confirmed speakers now and probably about 60 more to go, which I'll probably be pretty done in the next 10 days, 2 weeks. And then you got to worry about the drop-offs, you know, and the people you got to substitute. So be on standby, Dan.
I'm excited to be there. I think it's the first time in 15, 20 years that we've been at Hollywood and Highland. I remember the conference opened the Lowe's when it first came online, just down the street from the Hollywood Bowl. And I think it was there for a couple of years, but then it's obviously moved quite a bit. Nashville, San Francisco, Beverly Hills, but now back in Hollywood and Highlands, just down from that beautiful theater. And what a great bar and great place to hang. So it's a beautiful hotel and should be a good time.
Yeah, you know, the trade show space isn't like it has been at the Beverly Hilton. I think they're going to set up because our sponsorship numbers are really good. I heard today on our call, and they're setting them up in like pool cabanas and more visiting and networking out there. I hope the weather's good, and we'll see how it goes. You know, I'm kind of partial to the Beverly Hilton, but they're doing renos, and we couldn't get back in there, and everybody says it's great. I haven't done a walkthrough yet, but we're going to be jam-packed with 2, sometimes 3 things going on at a time. So the Lowe's will get a good dose of the concert business, that's for sure.
Well, there's the upsides of both, right? Because when you're at that Hilton, you can walk to Nate Nals and have lunch, but you can walk down to Orange and hit In and Out for lunch from where you're at there. So, you know, they both have upsides to them for sure.
People eat lunch during this? I was unaware.
You gotta make your meetings about the meal, otherwise you never leave the hotel.
Well, I mean, that's kind of my life in those 3 days. But then, you know, I take a tour bus out there and then back. And on the way back, we're talking about stopping to see Fish at the Sphere. I guess it was last year or the year before we stopped and saw U2 when they opened the Sphere. So you kind of route from LA back to Nashville by way of Vegas and hit the Sphere. So that ought to work out.
Well, that's a good time. What are the other highlights you're excited about for the conference?
Well, talking about that first day, as being sort of marketing and branding focused, for the first time, we've got all of our top marketing exec of the year. We'll do a marketing panel on that day. All 6 of them are going to do it, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to get more of these nominees onto these panels because if their peers think enough of them to nominate them, then they probably have a pretty good take. So we do a lot of that. President of Ticketmaster is going to give his first talk at Pollstar about what the impact of AI on ticketing. And I mean, you know, Ticketmaster is without a doubt going to be on the cutting edge of whatever's going on out there. So I'd be interesting to hear what he's got to say. We got a good panel that's fully booked about the first tour cycle for artists. That's the one you saw that it was just announced, and it's got most of the major agencies and Live Nation on that one. typical kind of content that you try to rework to have a certain specific angle on it, whether it's festivals, whether it's international. There's one on female fandom, how female fans can drive these massively successful tours, and interested in how that's going to go out. By the way, the president or Ticketmaster now, I don't know if you've met him or not, but it's Samuel Mehta. I'm going to do a Q&A with Pete Shapiro about all the things he's doing on the third day. That ought to be fun. So, it's all over the place. Security, what Kevin and Charles all have to talk about should get a good crowd.
You have you and Shappy going one-on-one. That sounds so much fun.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy to me, from the Wetlands to Lock-In, the Brooklyn Bowl, this kids tour, rock and roll thing he's doing now, kind of family entertainment. He's just an interesting guy to talk to, so I look forward to that. Quite a few international folks here that we try to populate throughout sessions, but also have a fully focused international panel that's on primarily UK, Europe, and the Middle East. Got some good people booked for that. So a little bit of everything, really.
All right. So it's Pollstar Live 2026, April 14, 15, and 16. That's at the Lowe's Hotels in West Hollywood, right down the street from the Hollywood Bowl, Hollywood and Highland. Get your registration now. This sells out every year. Sure to do it this year. Ray, I can't thank you enough for joining us and giving us a little sneak peek on what's to come at Pollstar Live 2026.
Hey, I appreciate it, Dan. It's always good to get back together. I appreciate the you being my hype man for a little while, and everybody, if you come, say hello. It's been a lot of fun putting it together, and I can't wait to see it.
Pollstar is always a fantastic hang, always a great grip and grin. Tons of great panel, tons of great networking, tons of great content. Make sure you get registered. I'm sure it will sell out. Head to pollstar.live.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein.
Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller. John Schur.
Marcia Flessick.
Mike Fruitman. Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Pretty thrilled about this month's feature interview. We've got Randy Nichols. As Dan mentioned at the top of the podcast, Randy was a moderator of one of the best panels that I've seen in recent memory, this year's Aspen Live Music Conference, where he sat in on a ticketing panel with Dean from AXS, a gentleman from StubHub, and David Marcus, where they discussed the bouts that are going on in the secondary right now. And I can't think of anyone that's more knowledgeable at this space to bring on this podcast to talk about this, as well as his journey through artist management. So please help me welcome to the podcast, Mr. Randy Nichols.
Randy Nichols. Man, it is so good to see you. I loved hanging with you in Aspen. Welcome, Promoter 101.
Thanks for having me, and it was a good time.
Let's start out with your education and how you found your way to the business.
So, like so many people that started in the industry in the era that I came in, which was, the early to mid 90s, I was a kid in college booking shows at my college, head of a concert committee, and I was on Long Island just out of New York City. So I was going into the city to intern for various companies in different areas of the industry, and kind of got my feet wet from there and did a bunch of different internships. And the last of them that I did was at a company called Artist and Audience.
A lot of people gross their teeth at Artist and Audience.
Oh, yeah. So
Alex Ocean company of days back that had legendary Pink Dots, Nine Inch Nails, and Paul McCartney, and Guns N' Roses.
Yes, and Guns. And I was the very first assistant for Tim Bohr, Ken from English, and Sam Kirby, all at the same time.
Well, if that isn't one guy having three completely different bosses simultaneously, I don't know what is.
I look back at that time and I loved it. Like, I had, my little run-ins with each of them in various ways, but overall, they are all still friends to this day. And, not easy working with three very distinct personalities in this industry, but it gelled. I think everyone was happy to be starting their career, me just a notch behind them. But man, it was awesome.
The three of them can tell you to fuck off in three very distinct different ways. So you go from the intern world, you make it into becoming a junior agent.
Yep.
Was Real Big Fish your first client? Is that right?
So Weston was my first client. It was a pop
Really?
punk band from Philadelphia who years later resurfaced as a band called Beach Slang, which was like a wannabe replacements band on Polyvinyl that had a moment and toured with I'm forgetting everyone they toured with now, but they had a couple of really good tours. But so Weston was my first client, then Real Big Fish, and I signed Real Big Fish accidentally. Like I wasn't going after them. I wasn't trying to do anything. I had Real Big Fish opening up for Weston at the Trocadero in Philly. And I was like a 21, 22-year-old agent. I was like crowd surfing, stage diving, just a crazy kid at the show, but also had my shit together. And I met Vince
before you had him, right?
Yeah, they were at Tahoe, and I met Vince Pileggi, who was their manager for almost their entire career at that show. And I was just going off as a punk rock kid in the audience at that show. And Vince introduced himself to me and met me and was like, our agent doesn't even know the band's name, like the band members' names. And you're here singing along to every word, freaking out. And he's like, we need to take a meeting. And by no means was I trying to sign the band, trying to do anything, but Rick Bombay, as you can imagine, was not happy with me. And, you know, like a few months later, I was at a Less Than Jake show. Another band I just love. I'm not trying to poach, not trying to do anything. And I can't remember because it's been so many years whether he was there and asked me while I was there or reached out to me afterwards. But it was like, stay the fuck away from my bands. And it's like, I'm not trying to steal your business. I just love your taste in your bands. If he called me up and asked me to come work for him, I probably would have dropped everything to come work for him, to be honest.
We used to call Tahoe Agency the Skaho Agency. It's like Less Than Jake, Blink 182. They had them all. Voodoo Glow Skulls, Blue Meanies. Great bands. Whole lot of fun. You're there for Real Big Fish, and that's the first real ride.
Yeah, so Real Big Fish, went through, I needed a co-agent on them because I was just a kid who didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I went to From English, so I thought he was the best agent at the time in the office. Handed them to him to be co-agent with me, and he still has the band to this day. At that point in time, they were his biggest client. He was booking just a couple of very small acts, Moon Pools and Caterpillars, and I think the legendary Jim Ruiz project were his clients, but I knew he was going to be a great agent. Asked him to work on it with me. Worked on it with him through until Artist and Audience collapsed. Then decided to not follow most of the agents who went over to the agency group from there. It just didn't feel right when I was meeting with them. It's funny. I met with Steve Martin, who now I've got nothing but love for and a lot of respect. But at the time, something just didn't feel right. So I didn't want to go over there. And Ken kept the fish, and I moved on to management.
Ken kept the fish. Ken kept the fish.
Here's the name of your episode.
Ken kept the fish. I remember booking Life of Agony with Ken back in his Artist and Audience days. I remember the,
Oh, yeah.
Don't You Forget About Me.
Oh, God. Wow. That is lifetimes ago.
Right?
Yeah, Tim Bohr had the best roster, like Life of Agony, Dog Eat Dog, Typo Negative, Shelter, Earth Crisis, Orange Moon Millimeter. Forgetting so many others.
And his H2O too?
He did have H2O for a minute.
New York Hardcore.
Yeah.
So it's fun. Gotta love that stuff. All right, so you took a turn from the agency world and went into management. How did that come about?
Yeah, so actually a funny story how I went from agency to management. I decided that I didn't want to continue on as an agent, let Ken take Real Big Fish. And again, Ken was really kind to me when I left. He didn't just, try to screw me over and take the band. He was trying to give me a minute to get my feet on the ground. Decided I didn't want to be an agent, called up everyone that I was working with at the time to say I'm no longer an agent. One of them was an artist named The Pilfers, who were this ska reggae punk band. And I called the singer Cooley Ranks to tell him that I am no longer going to be an agent. And he told me, he goes, well, then you're the manager. He's like basically told me I'm not allowed to quit. And he's like this Jamaican dude who's like 15 years older than me, very intimidating. And he's just like, you're the manager. Your job now is to get an agent. And was just like this like Jamaican accent, like this Jamaican tough guy accent. And it was like, you're the manager. And I'm like, I don't know if I know how to be a manager. It was like, you're a manager, Randy. You've been managing us. So I became their manager and started really learning my chops in management. And one of my favorite things to share like this many years later now is once in a blue moon, I'll like run into Cooley Ranks somewhere and I see him and this huge smile breaks out on his face. And he always tells me the same thing. I told you you're a manager. And literally, that's my story, how I became a manager. Cooley Ranks told me I was, and I didn't have a choice.
Okay, so what year is that?
It's about 1997.
97. Okay, and it's just become 2026.
Yeah.
That's a 30-year ride, 29-year ride.
It doesn't seem like it, but I guess it is. I still kind of trying to figure out what I do in this business, but I've been doing it for 30 years.
Very cool. Now let's talk about some of the acts. I mean, obviously, everybody knows Under Oath is the big story, right? Because you took them from the clubs into some of the biggest, ballrooms and bigger tours in the country. But who else is amongst that? Because there's a lot of acts.
Yeah. So the first act that I had that really grew into real business, or real club business for sure, was the Starting Line. And I started with the Starting Line pretty much from the beginning. They'd
So through records stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, Drive-Through Records. And another great story of how I ended up becoming a manager is I went and worked for some record companies for a minute, did a couple of other things while I was managing the Pilfers. Pilfers break up, and then I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I literally started Randy Nichols Needs a Job newsletter that I used to send out once a week to everyone I knew in the business. And this is in this was about 2000, or actually 2001. Yeah, it was early 2001. It was after like whatever job I had, and I really couldn't figure out what to do next. Start the Randy Nichols Needs a Job newsletter that I sent out once a week, and it weirdly went viral before going viral was a thing. And it reached the point where people kept sending me jobs that weren't right for me. So I created a really early website that listed the jobs. And then I started posting just other weird, funny industry stuff on this website. And then my like viral moment that happened with this Randy Nichols Needs a Job website / newsletter was Mariah Carey had a breakdown at some point where she called into her website and fired her management and did all these crazy things. And it was pulled offline instantly, but somebody sent it to me and I put it up on my website, and all these people started showing up at the Randy Nichols Needs a Job newsletter, to the point where on like September 9th, 2001, I did an interview with the LA Times about needing a job and my website. But if you notice the date, like I can't remember exactly what it was, like September 8th or 9th, 2001. So you have 9/11 hits like 3 days later and can't find a job. The interview obviously never went to print because the whole world changed. I stopped sending the newsletter because it just felt like the wrong thing to do. And the only people that were contacting me about working with them were Richard and Stephanie, who own Drive-Through Records. And I was like, fuck, I guess I'm going to start a management company with these guys. It's literally my only option. And I'd known them since they were kids, coming to ska shows and stuff. So it's like, fuck it. I've known them for a long time. I guess I'm starting a management company. And they asked me to come in and manage the Starting Line and Finch. Really long answer there, but I'm sure there's some good tidbits.
Incredible story.
That's some use of free media right there. Like before free media was a thing we even measured, like what a brilliant way to go about it.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Larry Weintraub, who ran Fanscape, because to this day, every time I see Larry, he just looks at me and points and goes, Randy Nichols needs a job. And to me, that's the biggest compliment, because he's just like one of the best marketers of his era. And for him to always remember that, I'm like, all right, I did a great job.
Love Larry Weintraub. Great story about mergers and acquisitions, about how he built something and sold it and grew it. And definitely one of those guys that's always paid it forward and been a great mentor in the business.
100%.
All right. So baseline, you've worked with a lot of acts, and Starting Line's one of my favorite because like back in my Thrasher days, it's one of those shows where the band would always tell me to take off whatever hoodie I was wearing, and they'd give me a brand new hoodie out of the merch boxes they were setting up. They're like, you're a Starting Line show, you should be wearing our hoodie. And you went out of your way to make sure you weren't wearing the last Starting Line hoodie so you could get the new hoodie every time, because those guys were always so great about that.
That's awesome. They were such a great band to work with, and I really cut my teeth in the industry with them. We learned together, and I had like a 21 year run with them, where about a year and a half ago I dropped them though, and it just didn't feel right anymore. I'd become almost like a member of the band rather than a manager, which in some senses is good. But when you have division in the band, you end up aligned with various people rather than kind of the trusted overseer. And I went to the band and was just like, this isn't working anymore. And I love you guys and want to maintain my relationship. Let's end this and I'll help you find a manager. And literally put together a short list for them, did outreach to other managers because it was just time. And the way I describe this sometimes to people is a band is a corporation and the band are the board of directors and the manager is the CEO. And very few companies keep a CEO for 20 plus years. And sometimes it works and it's right. And it just didn't feel right anymore. And I was, really sad. It was really hard to do, but I felt like it was the right thing to do for their business. So I'd stepped aside about a year and a half ago and still love those guys too. So in addition to the Starting Line and Under Oath, I also managed Say Anything through their biggest era of their career for Say Anything as a Real Boy and it's In Defense of a Genre through to the Say Anything record. Also managed Bayside for a couple of years. Their Long Island legends here have done well nationally and was never a huge fan of that band. They came to me asking me for help. Oh, this is another great quick story though. So Bayside guys asked me to manage them. I basically told them, I was like, look, nobody really cares about your band. You guys are awesome people, but you only have so much value. And they said, look, just get lunch with us. Sat down, had lunch with them, and they laid out all their challenges that they have. And I laid out how to defeat those challenges. And at the end of it, they're like, well, are you going to come in and run this? And I was like, no, I was just here to help you out. They're like, come on, you have the plan. This is going to work. Let's do it. So I said, okay. And I managed them for about 3 years. And we just had an amazing, weird time. Like I'd show up in the studio and a producer would be like, hey, do you want to hear the songs? And they'd be like, he doesn't want to hear the songs. He hates our band. But it just worked and went through like an album cycle and a half with them. And then me and Anthony, their singer, kind of disagreed on God knows what. And kind of much like the Starting Line, except they got rid of me. He was just like, this doesn't work anymore. I'm like, you're right, it doesn't. He kept wanting to kind of fight with me because he's just that like New York, kind of like tough kind of guy, and kept trying to fight with me. Like, nah, man, we're not going to fight. And he and I are good friends to this day now too. And I, really helped turn their business around. You'll probably remember this tour. It was about 10 years ago. They called it the 15th birthday tour. And basically they always went out and were the support band or co-headliner and never headlined. I told them, you need to go out, overpay support, and be a true headliner and prove your worth. And they were always not wanting to pay support a lot of money. So I was like, gotta pay support a lot of money. You're going to sell the industry that you're a headliner. And they had a good 10-year run of doing much, much stronger club business because of it.
That's incredible. Like the history there and you telling a band that you just don't really like them all that much, like right from the get-go.
What a flex on that pitch though, I don't really like your band, but here's how you fix all your problems. I love that.
Yeah, but they were my friends. So much of like literally, I look at my whole career as I get paid to give my friends advice. And that goes for the band management. And that goes now, I do a lot of consulting for music tech startups. I'm paid to jump on the phone and talk to my friends and bullshit and give them ideas. And whether I like it or not is almost not relevant at times. Doesn't mean I want to manage bands I don't like. But at the same time, if I love the people and I can help them, so what? Like you could have a beer company where I don't love the beer, but still help you market it.
Don't get high on your own supply, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like Bayside, was that Melanie King as the agent?
She was at one point. Andrew Ellis was when I was working with them, but Melody was the agent.
Andrew Ellis. Well, we're just talking about all of the fucking stars of the business, aren't we?
Might as well.
Let's go for the management side and jump into ticketing.
Well, before we do that, Dan, I do want to touch on something Randy talked about here because I think this is important for people that are getting to know Randy to understand what he's done outside of management as we get into ticketing. But Randy, like one of the things that I was always really impressed, having met you a few years ago, was in addition to your management work, you're an advisor to some incredible companies, mostly focusing music tech. I'm sure I could list off some of them from the top of my head, but I'd love to kind of tour through like the advisory work you've done for companies like At Venue and Bands in Town and Moment and Immensity. I'm sure I'm missing a few others, but how'd you take your skills as a manager to kind of look at the shiny new tools that you found and advise? Like, how did you come across that advisory business?
Yeah, so when I was at Red Light Management, I did a 6-year stint at Red Light, and we'd have these founders that were brilliant that would come into our office and want to meet the Red Light managers. And most of them wouldn't give these founders the time of day. I would sit down and meet them, and they'd be trying to fix problems in our industry that weren't problems, but they were actually brilliant people. And I just started building relationships with them and got to know them and would give them advice and tell them everything they were doing wrong with their business. And in music, nobody ever wants to hear what they're doing wrong. In startup world, everybody only wants to hear what's wrong so that they could fix it and make it better. So I ended up just, building all these relationships. And the first one was Bands in Town. Bands in Town came into my office, pitched us on using it.
Is it
and
Fabrice and his team early on? Who's
No, this is before Fabrice bought the company. There's a revisionist history of Bands in Town. Fabrice and Julian ended up the founders of Band in Town.
It was selfish. Yeah, right.
No, Todd Cronin is the founder of Bands in Town, who lives in San Diego, used to work at the Eccles Nest in Boston. He started Bands in Town. He sold it to Selfish. I was advising him before he sold it to Selfish.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I met with Todd and his team, and they were like a team of 4 people. And their pitch was that they can automatically list tour dates on your website. I told them, this is great, but we don't want tour dates automatically on a website. We want to be able to approve what goes on our site and what doesn't, because the assholes like Dan put the show on sale before they're supposed to be on sale. And then we're announcing a show before it's supposed to be announced, and it causes all kinds of problems. So literally my advice was a little toggle that said, I choose when the show goes live. And that changed from people not wanting to use this product to using it because it gave us control. And it also allowed them to better manage their data. So I went from Bands in Town, giving them a lot of advice, helping scale that company from, a couple of, 100,000 users to, I think they're at 100 million users now, which is insane. And the next company I greatly got involved with was At Venue. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners know At Venue, but at the time when I first started talking to them, they were pre-revenue. No one knew who they were, but they were just amazing, really smart people. I was honestly a little skeptical if they would build the product that they needed to build, but they were just such good people. I wanted to see them win, and I kept helping them and helped them from pre-revenue through to when I exited my shares where they were at over $200 million valuation. So it's wild. And the whole ride is so similar to working with a band because you're just helping fine tune an idea and getting everyone in the industry to understand why something's great.
How much of that 200 million did you walk with?
All of it. A very tiny fit. What I will say is I got a couple of years salary out of it, which is a good way to look at it. And this is how I look at a lot of the consulting work I do. I'm never going to get incredibly wealthy from the consulting work, but if every few years I have an exit from one of them that pays my bills for a couple of years, it's like the equivalent of having worked for full time for these companies and getting paid after the fact. And again, I'm helping my friends. Like I would do a lot of what I did if they didn't pay me, but I sure as hell, appreciate the money, and they actually appreciate paying me it too, which is very different from bands also, because I can tell you one of the founders of At Venue, right around the time we got paid on this sale where we sold a chunk of the company, I said to him, like, do you feel weird, cutting me such a big check for how little I did? And he kind of stopped and started laughing at me. He's like, are you fucking serious? Like, you did this, you did that, you did this. And it's the polar opposite of band management. Every time you get paid, bands seem to be annoyed you're getting paid. And these guys were excited to pay me. So it's just a very refreshing, different vibe.
Actually, Luke, Randy, you're both managers. It seems like that's a natural thing in the business. Historically, acts don't love paying anyone. It does seem like an unspoken thing, but that it does come up quite a bit with the act is our manager takes this, our agent takes this, as if they don't work really hard and constantly for that money. Do you guys constantly feel that, that from your acts, they don't feel you've earned what you're getting?
I don't think it's a constant thing. We're lucky to have some good clients that value the work that we do. But you always have those certain, you could probably speak to this as well too, Randy, whether it be catalog sales, some sort of liquidity moment where they come back to you and they start saying, 15 seems kind of high. How about 12.5 or something like that? And those conversations irk the shit out of me. I'm like, we work pretty hard. We throw a lot of bodies at you, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, earnestly maybe working harder than you in some cases to advance your career. So no, I'm not going to, break off a piece here for you.
It's incredibly frustrating, and like honestly, throughout my entire career, no day was more just like nerve wracking than the day that the tour settlement would go out from the business manager to the band, and we'd go over the numbers. Like I literally would feel sick. Right up, 20 years later into management, I would feel sick knowing the phone call that I have to make to justify why the numbers are what they are. And it's not necessarily just what I got, it's why did we make less? Why did this expense go up? And it's just miserable. And I don't miss that at all for this moment where I don't have a major client.
This is an interesting thing that nobody really seems to talk about in the industry, but it is really probably one of the few industries where it does constantly be a theme. Because I hear it at shows all the time when I'm talking to the acts. It's just like between the manager commission and the agency commission, it's funny. And maybe they bitch to you guys about what we make, but I don't really ever hear about them pissed at us because they see that direct payment from us because the money's going out so quickly. And we have to earn ours like before we get anything back that night, which, there's an argument that you guys do too, but it's a longer play.
Well, luckily for me, the recent story and where the Eye of Sauron, so to speak, has been put into the bands for my clients is probably the next topic that I want to talk a little bit about, which is not necessarily about the promoters getting paid too much, Dan, or managers, Randy in our case, getting this too, but the share of gross transaction that comes out of like things like ticketing fees. Your fans are paying $100 for a ticket. 20 of that is going to Ticketmaster, 80 is going to promoter, and it's being chopped, 85-15 with you after some expenses. But I don't know another business in this world where like an intermediary like Ticketmaster or, insert ticketing company here can at a club level take 40% of a gross transactional value for basically being a middleman. And I think that's...
But they're not really taking that much though. They're just the front for how Dan's making up on all his losses.
Yeah. Dan, what do you know about that?
Look, I think it's an interesting thing because back in the day, the losses used to be greater. I buy shows by the numbers. I'm pretty data organized. I know exactly what the last show did. I know what the band is trending at currently. I know if sales are up or down. And I'm pretty transparent with my numbers with the acts too, because it's like, if we win, we all win, right? But like, I'm truly a believer that if we're not all cutting a deal that's set up for us all to win at the end, if it works, and we're all protected if it doesn't, then we're not in a good partnership. But long term, acts aren't going to want to be in business with me if they feel I'm getting rich and they're on this treadmill where they're not making anything. And it's got to be an equal give and take where I'm getting some, they're getting some, and everybody on the team is getting a taste. Otherwise, it's going to break down and it's not going to work. Like the funds are the oil that, makes the machine lube. It doesn't work otherwise.
Yeah, the key thing we need though is transparency, because you guys need those fees. We hate them, but they are necessary quite often too. And we need the industry to evolve to a point where deals are based on the actual gross. And, this goes to the part that we're going to talk about later with my work against scalpers too. But, like Alex Cochin, who taught me how to be an agent years ago, is like, there's only so much money on the table and you want to get as much of that money on the table for your artist. And for as many years as I could think of, most of us are fighting about money on one table, but there's a table next to us that has fees, that has scalper money, all these other things that we're not actually getting paid on. And we need to be paid on everything. At the end of the day, that means that artists should probably be making a smaller percentage of the gross in exchange for the fees disappearing. There are solutions, and that may include that, on every ticket, the first $5 goes into some unrecouped, formula to cover overhead. Like, I don't know exactly what the formula is, but the way it works now is we're negotiating deals where we don't even truly know what the fan is paying for a ticket.
Well, and part of it is years ago, I believe it was Niederlander came up with the concept of 50 cents a ticket as a facility fee. And now every venue in the world adds on top of their rent, on top of their expenses, on top of the percentage, a restoration fee. And man, I don't think any of those venues have replaced a toilet seat in 25 years. I don't know where the fuck that money's going, but I am paying thousands of dollars into this FEM that's going somewhere. It's just like, oh, it's $6 now. It's like on top of your incredibly high rebate, on top of your incredibly high rent, on top of your base, you're still adding an extra $6 a ticket that just comes directly against the gross. What the fuck? Where's that money going? Like, because I don't see it in your venue.
Restoring their bank accounts.
It was an amazing thing, right? It's just like, okay, it's like exactly how much does go to the venue. Like, let's figure that out.
Yeah, but in fairness, especially my friends in Neva, a lot of these venues, this is how they survive, is on the ticketing fee. It's it's on the margins that they're getting by, and it's not all of them, but there are some that's how they're surviving. So I have mixed feelings.
And when you're talking about Neva, I think in a lot of cases we're talking about GA shows, the ball rig, the clubs, and the facility fees aren't usually $6 in a GA venue where they're hoping to get you in to drink. Even though we've learned more and more that people are buying less alcohol and less drinks at the bar. Part of that is they're more expensive, but mostly because America's gotten healthier. The younger generations just drink less than we used to. People are making less trips to the bar and they're spending less at the show on alcohol than they've historically ever done.
They need to start selling low dosage THC drinks at venues.
And a lot of them already do because it's legal in a lot of places, and that's still not changing things.
But that's usually also one visit to a bar too, versus a couple trips for
Well, if you make it low dosage, if each drink is 2 milligrams, you need 5 drinks to get a buzz. You gotta get creative.
Well, I think the creative is they're charging a fortune for the one drink they're going to get out of you, and that's going to be. But it's a different game because we used to go to the shows and you'd get in line and you'd basically get back at the end of the line with your drink. Yeah, like because by the time you got through the line, you needed another drink again. So that's like how you got your buzz, right? But now it's a different day. But it's different competitive. But I know that there are reserve seat venues part of Neva. But I think when we're talking about Neva, I just want to point out because we were just talking about it that those $6 facility fees are usually the seated venues, not the ballrooms. I think that's important. They do have them, but usually it's $1 or $2 in the GA in the GA venues and. They really try to keep the fees down in the clubs and the ballrooms as much as possible because they're just trying to get you in.
Fair, but they're still pretty significant. Like I was looking at a study that someone did recently that said it was, club fees are an average of 33% of the ticket price of the face value.
Yep.
And this came from somebody from the venue community. So, it can be significant in the clubs.
Yeah, if it's a $14.95 ticket on top of a $20 GA seat, you're at 33% fast.
I think all the ticketing companies are pretty competitive on the fees now, and so somebody may be $1 cheaper or not, but I think they're all in that kind of in line these days. It's pretty competitive field.
I would disagree with that, Dan, because there are platforms out there that Tixer and the like where this kind of points back to Randy's point about transparency. I mean. Venue operators can kind of select what their fees are and build in their own rebates on top of those things and kind of set those prices in there. But you can see GA fees in rooms as low as like, $6-7 on a $20 ticket.
Sure. And that comes down to what the venue is setting up in their deal, right? So it has a lot to do with user error as far as the deal goes, because you can price your fans right out of the fucking market.
And that's a decision that venue operators make when they make these ticketing agreements, right? The ticketing platform has X fee they have to charge, and you can add $1 or $2 for yourself or whatever that looks like, inside that fee, and take the 6 that's the baseline fee and make it 7 and keep $1 for yourself. And that's a decision you make as a venue operator, right? But that points to
a lot of it has to do with what the advance was. When they cut the deal and how many years and how many tickets they're selling. And that's a conversation for Jeff White and Sarah Mertz and everyone else that you bring into that conversation to have. And that's a separate conversation. But yeah, you're right. We're not comparing apples to oranges because venues that are trying to keep fees down can keep fees down. Venues that are trying to get the highest advance or the highest payback play a different game.
Yeah. Now that we're in it, let's talk about your work in ticketing and scalping here, Randy. For those who aren't following you on LinkedIn, I'm like a religious follower of your posts and your thoughts on LinkedIn, and you share a lot of great insight from your work kind of covering anti-scalping initiatives. I think largely through your work in NITO.
National Independent Talent Organization.
This is the one Frank Riley and Wayne Forte and Tom Chauncey put together, right?
Correct.
So how did you find yourself, like what was kind of the impetus for you to take such a great interest in scalping and ticketing and throw yourself into this subject?
Yeah, so I feel like nobody likes scalpers. I think that's a given. You've never heard somebody be like, "I like scalpers." So it first came on my radar as a kid, camping out, buying concert tickets, and I used to camp out at the Video Connection in Rockville Center, New York. I would be the first person online. I'd come in the door when they opened it at the time the show went on sale. Printers printing. There's a stack of tickets like 4 inches thick on the table, and the guy sells tickets to the first 2 people online and tells them the show's sold out. And like that was my first real exposure to scalping. I'm like, these guys are a front for something.
Randy, as a wrinkle to that, I think the entire sports world would disagree. I think all the sports fans seem to love scalpers.
You think the sports fans love scalpers?
Yeah, I think they love waiting until the last second, deciding what they're going to go to and know they can get access to anything, especially the ones that can afford it.
No, well, there's a subset of people who love pays to wait. And if I'm going to buy a show from the scalper platform, agreed. But I don't know that people love the scalpers so much as they love that the price drops. Because if it's the Super Bowl, if it's a big championship game, if it's the World Cup, the things that they can't get into where they're jacked up, they're pissed off, But you're right. They never get a thank you for the shows that they bought that they made bad bets on. So I do understand where you're coming from there.
And I'd be the first to thank them because I noticed that promoters and agencies and managers never really asked to scrub the lists on shows that didn't sell well.
I mean, you're not wrong, but of course not, because you're looking to scrub the list to make sure you could get more tickets into real fans' hands.
Sure, but yeah, when we're losing, it's just like it's awfully hypocritical of all of us. But we'll take their money.
Yeah,
it's not what money is not. It's not tainted.
I mean, you're gonna find hypocrisy everywhere, and you're not wrong. And there's certain things like I agree with the scalpers that when we as an industry cancel tickets on a show that are bought on the secondary market that we didn't announce in advance, don't buy on the secondary, it creates a bad experience for the fans. And it's like, I understand why we do it and I'm partially in support of it, but anytime a ticket is canceled to screw a scalper and it hurts a fan, it's a bad experience across the board. So, but getting back to the point is nobody really likes scalpers as a whole. There's opportunities here and there that we could get into, but these scalpers I learned in time, yeah, they suck, blah, 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 whatever. But everybody was just screaming at the sky, being mad at them. And I decided I wanted to learn what they're doing and began getting to know brokers, getting to know the technology companies that they use, and just really talking to these people and understanding their justification for what they're doing and why they're doing it. And even more importantly, their tools that they use, because they have so much better data than we have on our own industry. Like one of the things that blew my mind last year that I discovered is I found a scalper tool where I could pull a ticket count for any show happening anywhere in the US, as long as it's on a major ticketing platform. And, I find it laughable that you still have agents who are so protective of their tour's ticket counts. And literally, I can pull a ticket count for any tour I want instantaneously. So there's all these little things out there where they know our business better than we do. And I want to learn from them and use that to better protect our fans.
And I'm really amazed the ways that you have taken to learning some of this stuff and how you have immersed yourself into the scalper world. You talked about going undercover into some scalper discords and learning about their business. Was there something that was the most single shocking thing you learned in that kind of undercover operation you led there about scalping operations that maybe an average music fan or even artist doesn't realize?
The most shocking stuff I don't even want to talk about publicly. I'll just leave it at that. But I would say the offshore companies, like where money is flowing through like the Seychelles Islands and like all these, like sketchy corporate, hiding countries, basically. Like there's a lot of just really interesting business out there. But you know what? Beyond that, though, I think the thing that was probably most shocking to me is the fact that the ticket scalping industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's, somewhere between $9 and $10 billion with a B a year in sales. And they frame their business that they're a mom and pop business, just guys on a street corner trying to make a buck. And they're actually large private equity backed corporations. And the majority of the biggest ticket broker operations are part of private equity backed businesses. And that was definitely a surprise. But the surprises just keep coming. Like one of the more recent things that I learned about is if there's an entire financing business for brokers. Like you don't need to have cash to buy the tickets. There's companies that will finance your purchase of tickets and then distribute them on your behalf through their pipelines. The best way I would describe it is they're like the TuneCore of ticket distribution. And they distribute the tickets on your behalf. So they're holding the tickets as collateral against the loan that they made you. So they're then paying you out when the ticket sells. So it's a really safe investment. And, there's companies that have, $50-80 million a year credit lines simply for funding scalpers.
Wow.
Yeah. So those are the kind of things that blow my mind, where it's just like, it keeps getting more and more complex as I learn more things.
So let's talk. We could go a variety of directions with that, but I do want to stay on this financing thing for just a hot second. That is something that's astonishing to me. The support businesses that feed the ecosystem of scalpers seem to be, and by your estimation, pretty complex. Are these like, to your point about private equity being involved, like Vivid Seats, for example, backed by Todd and his company that had that awesome Christmas Eve, you said Christmas private party with Bruno Mars and
yeah.
That was the owner of the Dodgers and chairman of the board of Vivid Seats, I believe. Is this mostly private capital, private equity, or like what types of banks and institutions are involved in this stuff?
Yeah. So you have the two publicly traded ticketing companies or secondary market ticketing companies being Vivid Seat and StubHub. Those are publicly traded. But then, Victory Live is private equity backed. Trying to remember the other ones. It's been a minute. Automatic is private equity backed. Don't recall if any tickets is private equity backed. But there's 5 or 6 companies out there that are private equity backed in the scalper ecosystem. And, like Victory Live, it's a roll-up. They're out there buying more and more businesses to, bolt on so that they can control the entire ecosystem. They complain about Ticketmaster being a monopoly, but they're looking to be a monopoly to control every aspect of the secondary market. So, it's no different in any way, on their end or our end.
That's kind of shocking to kind of see that level of money interest behind all this stuff, and I didn't realize it was a $9 or $10 billion business. I would have guessed a $2 or $3 billion business. To be kind of 3x that is pretty insane.
Yeah, it's a significant business, and that's including everything. That's sports tickets. That's any revenue derived in the resale industry, and that'll include. I believe that number probably includes Ticketmaster resale as well. So that does go on the balance sheet of a primary, secondary platform.
Yeah. So you talked about this tool that can pull ticket counts pretty much from every show, kind of scraping the web here. And there was a post where you kind of detailed how scalpers use things like browser plugins and autofill scripts that, can work faster than any human really. Is any of that, is there any consumer facing tech that could actually like level the playing field, or is this kind of queue system fundamentally broken in ticketing?
Okay, well, two different questions. The queue system is fundamentally broken, 100% fundamentally broken. I've seen just posted on Instagram people sharing the script of how to cut to the front of the queue where you don't wait online to buy tickets. And most of the scalpers are using these tools. And there's a company called Qit, which both Ticketmaster, Access, and a ton of other companies use. And you can 100% cut the line. I had the former CTO of a major ticketing company who I'm friends with. I showed him the code and he looked at it and goes, yeah, that looks like it. Absolutely, you could cut the queue with that. So that's one huge flaw we have is Qt doesn't work and everyone's using the product. So like it's shockingly bad. But what that also tells you is anyone can find these tools. You could go on Fiverr and find 100 different companies that make different ticket bots. And you have also just scalper communities where they coach each other on and teach them how to do it. And any fan could join these communities. A lot of these communities, they charge like $100 a year. I think there's a company, I think it's called Shows on Sale, if I'm not mistaken. I may be getting the name wrong, where I become friendly with the CEO of that company. And what he's sort of doing is empowering all the lowest of level of ticket scalpers to teach them how to be scalpers. And the interesting thing that's happening there is as private equity rolls up the scalping industry, the low level ticket scalpers getting screwed because they're building direct relationships that are cutting out the scalpers. So eventually, the guy from the street corner who's now a guy online, they're all getting cut out and it's becoming more controlled strictly by big business.
So you think like the entrance of big money has kind of changed the ethics or maybe lack thereof in the secondary ticketing world?
Yeah, well, look at something like, and I'm not judging them for this, it's just factual.
Yeah.
Like Access, which has Access Anywhere, Access Distro, whatever they call it now in their partnership with Victory Live that distributes tickets to the secondary. Like what that does, it brings more money back to the grosses, which I fully support. I have no love for the scalpers, but if you think about it, if you're the ticket scalper, you're now competing with the primary promoter who's listing tickets side by side on the scalper platform, which makes it harder for that scalper to make money. And again, I don't have sympathy for them, but it's the whole model is changing.
Yeah. Let's talk for a little bit about, you've been a big critic of speculative ticket sales. Let's educate our audience a little bit on, you've compared speculative ticketing to basically short selling essentially in financial markets.
Yeah, it's short selling.
Yeah. Can you explain how a scalper can sell a ticket they don't even own yet and why that's so damaging to the business?
Yeah, well, the way all these secondary platforms work, with the exception of Ticketmaster, and not here to be a defender of Ticketmaster, it just happens to be the facts.
Yeah.
Do not ask for verification of a ticket before you list it for sale. Anyone could list any ticket at any time. So what scalpers do is the second a tour is announced, quite often before the on sale even, they list tickets for sale. And they charge a significant markup for that ticket. And then, as we were discussing earlier in our conversation, the whole pays to wait movement is as you get closer to the show date, the cost goes down for that ticket. So they sell the ticket early and buy the ticket late. So they sell it at a high price and buy it at a low price. And they can make, significant multiples on the tickets, which is basically the exact same thing as short selling in the stock market, except it's completely unregulated. And, you'll see these scalpers who are against regulation of the secondary market. And, then they'll also talk about the regulated safe secondary market. Yet these guys are, have an unregulated short selling business. And the ones who do this, they literally call themselves short sellers. They don't even hide. That's what they tell each other, the type of business that they're in, because there's different areas of scalping. You have people who buy tickets, sell them right away. You have people who buy tickets, hold, expect them to, go up in value later. You have people, there's a whole sect called mirroring. And mirroring is where you list the ticket on the secondary market without buying it yet, but it's an automated software that the second they buy it on StubHub, the transaction goes through on Ticketmaster to fulfill the order. So there's different types of scalpers doing different work.
I just curious, like in your deep dive in these kind of scalper chat rooms, for lack of a better term, is there any chatter about like market sentiment among scalpers when a major artist announce a tour? Like, how do they decide which shows they kind of want to attack, basically, in these things? Is it everything? Like, what does that look like?
The most sophisticated ones, they're using sophisticated data. They're using the same kind of data that Dan's using when he's looking to book a tour. They're analyzing the market and making decisions on what to buy. Or if they should just list a lot of tickets and acquire them later. But, so there's a lot of ways they approach it. But ultimately, they're looking at data, they're sharing with each other. Quite often, they don't want to share what they think is going to be hot. Like, why am I forgetting his name? NBA, whatever, the hip hop artist. Oh, NBA, whatever. Never broke again, that kid. He was one that his tickets the week of the show would go up in price. Most shows go down, but his tickets were shooting up the week of, and a lot of scalpers weren't talking about it at first because they didn't want other scalpers to know, because they wanted to control as bunch of the market as they could. But on some tours where it's like Taylor Swift, everybody knows, everyone's just talking about the market in general. But there will be tours that they just don't talk about. And then there's also private Discord groups that people pay for, that they share information with each other to just try to help each other and coach them on.
So let's talk a little bit about some of these kind of like subsets of scalping businesses. And I think one of the areas that I'm just kind of curious on is this data of deception around lookalike websites, which is, using venue or tour names and URLs to kind of trick fans into thinking that they're buying from the primary. How much of like the outrageous ticket price problem is actually just fans accidentally buying from these, kind of shadow mirrored websites?
I'm going to give the scalpers this one and say our prices have gotten so high in our industry that fans are upset about real actual ticket prices at this point. I think for years, there was a moment where they were upset that, they went to StubHub and thought it was a legitimate ticketing platform. I think on most A-list tours, they're sophisticated at this point and listing the tickets at a fairly high price to begin with on the primary. I mean, just look at the average ticket price on like Beyonce's tour last year, or like those kind of things. I mean, they're expensive on the primary, and that's not to attack Beyonce. That's I'll take some shit for this, but I feel like in the Promoter 101 community, I could get away with it. Rapinoe wasn't totally wrong when he said that tickets are too cheap, because anytime we're selling something where somebody can cut the line and resell it for triple, we have a problem. So we have been raising those prices in the industry as a whole. And unfortunately, because of scalpers, we've learned that there's more or less elasticity in the business to allow us to do that. And fans lose, but it was the scalpers that pushed it to happen. But I don't think that for the most part, it's that people are confused and ending up there. It does happen every day, though. So don't get me wrong. Yeah. Especially on the club level. People on the club level are getting tricked on a regular basis into going to scalper sites. And there's a lot of people that think it's just an arena act problem. And club acts are dealing with this on a regular basis on shows that aren't even sold out. These venue websites that are fake venue websites, we've had luck with getting a lot of that made illegal in the States, but they're changing their model slightly and becoming more of city guide websites.
Like Concierge is yeah.
And these websites are the worst of the worst of the worst. These are the guys that are, registered in the Seychelles Islands and the Caymans and like weird spots that these companies are incorporated. Those guys are just the worst in the sense that they're operating completely outside of any legal entities of any country, and
pretty much all legal structure around this, at least, for U.S. ticketing, right?
Yeah, I mean these fake venue websites are basically the Russian MP3 sites of the 2000s. It's the best way to describe them. You know, you knock them down, they're coming back the next day. There's no law to control them. Their money is all flowing through, tax haven areas. And interestingly enough, almost all these tickets run through a company called Ticket Network out of Connecticut. And Ticket Network's run by a guy named Dom Vaccaro, who is just kind of like the OG of the ticket industry. He's probably the most hated person to me in the industry, but he's also brilliant because he created all these models that everyone has since copied. And he's the only guy who's self-funded compared to everyone else who's all, taken in private equity money.
Don's the founder and CEO of RCN, right?
Yeah, RCN, Ticket Network.
Yeah. And RCN's one of the financial institutions lending out lines of credit, right?
Yep.
Let's talk for a little bit about stuff happening on the legislative side of things to kind of combat some of these problems. You've been a critic of bills that ban speculative ticketing, but have carve-outs in them for like ticket buying clubs. Do you think that's a case of legislators maybe being outsmarted or convinced by lobbyists, or is it something a little bit more intentional, the fact that those sorts of things end up in bills?
For the most part, they're outsmarted. There are scenarios where they know, but almost always these people don't know. The congresswoman, and I forget her name, and I don't mean to attack her, she's great on a lot of causes out of Chicago. I heard her speak about the bill on the Congress floor last year that had this carve out for concierge service. And she was describing how great this bill is for fans. And you could tell that she had literally never bought a ticket in her entire life and didn't know anything about how ticketing worked also. So that's the problem, is these people are fighting to protect us, but they just don't have any clue. And I've found, like in New York, like there's a state senator Skoufis, who had met with a bunch of the ticket scalpers and went to their events and took campaign contributions from them. He's a really smart guy, got to know them, got to understand what they were doing, and turned against them because he realized that they were the bad guys. So there are smart people who are spending their time getting to understand the problem and changing their position also. And, like one of the reasons that we've had success in the last couple of years on legislation is because during COVID, we had the Save Our Stages grant. All these venues got to know politicians across the country. And when they started having, the latest round of ticket issues around Taylor Swift, they had new people to call, new ticketing experts to call to get their opinion. And it was all the people they met that they worked with on the Save Our Stages app. And we gave very different feedback than the feedback they'd gotten from their previous ticket experts, which were actually the scalpers, to help them deal with the Ticketmaster problem. So like you had literally 20 years of every time Ticketmaster had a problem and it would go into legislation to talk about it, all the politicians would ask is, how does this hurt Ticketmaster? And they find a bunch of scalpers to say we're their competition and they're squashing competition. And here's how you make laws to protect the consumer. And it was 20 years of laws that were just damaging the consumer. And Ticketmaster in that time, their strategy was to protect the venues. And it was, be the bad guy for fees, be the bad guy for everything else. And that allowed the scalpers to gain strength. And post Save Our Stages, the whole climate has changed, and they're understanding and getting to know us, who the actual good guys are.
It seems like we do need to progress, past this, beyond the breakup Ticketmaster kind of narrative. I think the monopoly conversation is a distraction from the secondary market conversation right now, and it seems like we've kind of entered that phase of the chat at this point. Is that kind of your assessment of things too?
It's my assessment, but we're not there yet. Like when I sat down with the DOJ last year, I had a meeting with Gail Slater, who's the head of antitrust at the DOJ last year, as well as a couple of other legislators. And they immediately want to know how Ticketmaster is involved in this and how to stop them. I sat down and said to them, I said, look, none of that is going to have an impact on the scalper problem. Yeah. So we need to address both problems individually. And that's the biggest message that I'm trying to get across to legislators, because the two issues have been completely conflated and it's not accurate at all. And the problem is Ticketmaster Live Nation is such a hated company that in fighting this, you can't even be too close to them. And whenever I meet with people, I have to say, look, this is the independent venues. This is Ticketmaster. This is Access. This is everyone in the industry is fighting this, not just one specific company.
Yeah. Let's talk for a second about the failure that is the Bots Act. Why do you think the Bots Act has been so difficult to enforce? And what specific, like, meaningful penalty would actually make a professional scalper think twice?
Well, I think a lot of this is going to change in the very near term, because there's a major case going on right now, which is the FTC versus Key Investment Group. And that case is the first major enforcement of the Bots Act. And what's interesting about it is that company is probably not using what we all consider to be bots. They're using what I would describe as bionic ticket buying. Humans are doing the practice, but they are using technology to get around the restrictions that we have to protect fans. And the way the Bots Act is written, it says nothing anywhere in the Bots Act that it is an act against bots. It's against using technology to circumvent protections of ticket limits. So I think that this Key Investment Group case is fascinating because the FTC was investigating them and they're like, hey, we don't use bots. We just use tools that help our employees buy tickets faster, but they're not bots. So they took a preemptive action and sued the FTC. And not only did they sue the FTC, they sued the commissioners of the FTC individually, in addition to suing the FTC. And that case will be heard at some point this year. And that will be the most important bots case in the history of our country, because it's going to define what a bot is. Because currently, I know tons of brokers who I've gotten to know over the years who tell me legitimately, like, look, I would never use bots, but I will use, and they name all the browser plugins that they use, like Insomniac browser plugin and other tools like this that allow them to buy tickets faster because everything pre-populates, but it's not truly a bot. And this case is going to decide whether all those tools are bots.
Wow. If you were drafting like the perfect federal ticketing bill tomorrow, what's like the one technical loophole that you would immediately close?
Speculative ticketing is number one. Number two is, which fits the number one, is verifying that the ticket actually exists. Number three is having a rating system for sellers. If you go on Amazon, eBay, Uber, DoorDash, anywhere you make a purchase, there's a seller rating. On any of the ticketing sites, you don't know who you're buying from. There's no transparency. They could have just screwed the past 50 customers in a row and not fulfilled tickets, and you'd have no idea. So there should be a public rating and name for the brokers. And the next thing that I would do, if we could get it through, would be to cap how much someone could resell a ticket for. It basically allows fans to, resell their ticket and recoup their fees and whatever headaches they had around it. And, a small fee to pay for that technology.
3 great points for sure.
Yeah. And there's one other thing we could do, and I'll get Dan to laugh on this one, I'm sure. The one thing that we can do to actually end 100% of I should say 100%, end almost all scalping would be if people could return all their tickets. If you could return your tickets and get your money back and the promoter resells them at face value, and you ban anyone else having the right to resell a ticket other than the originator, where you just return it and it goes back on sale, that would solve the entire problem. But nobody in the industry is going to want to do that.
No shit.
And that's where, I look at the scalpers where they call bullshit on us at times, and I'm like, you know what? You're right. We can fix this problem. And since we choose not to, we're stuck in this game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah. Seems like an arms race that just like is never ending here, truly, right?
Yeah. But I think the scalpers would probably push back if we said no tickets can be resold anywhere, you can only return them. I think the scalpers would have a shit fit on that because that has the potential to put them out of business, or guarantees to put them out of business, I should say. But we would never do it anyway. But like there's real solutions here too. At the end of the day, we're not curing cancer. This isn't rocket science. This is a bunch of people trying to keep as much money as they can.
Let's tie in some of your kind of manager experience here and maybe talk about like face value exchange and the friction with that. So like some artists try to ban resale or use these face value exchanges. What's like the biggest operational nightmare a manager is going to face when they're trying to implement 100% non-transferable ticket and setup for a tour or a show?
So the biggest problem is we have 6 states in the country where non-transferable tickets are illegal. So that's a huge problem. You can't do it across the board everywhere. Like for instance, New York, Illinois, Colorado, and I forget which the other ones are. It is literally against the law to do a non-transferable ticket. So it makes these, and I don't know the laws in each one of the states, but I know in New York, the way the law is written, you can't have a face value exchange, an official one, because of the way the law is written. So it's just, the laws just aren't caught up with how we as an industry would like to run these things. So face value exchange is a great idea. I support it. I think we need more of it, but it's not perfect based on the existing technology as well as the laws in some states.
I was going to ask you a question, something like that. We're just kind of identifying which states have the kind of gold standard for anti-scalping laws and which ones are like more scalper havens. It seems like, the obvious kind of states where consumer protections are largely in place for other areas of business, probably it would follow that.
No, and I'll tell you why, is over the last 20 years, the scalpers have infiltrated the consumer groups, and the consumer groups are shilling for the scalpers. And this has started to change over the last 4 or 5 years. But the consumer groups were there to protect the ticket buyer, which included the scalpers. And they were fooled into fighting for really good laws for them. So it's not the states as a whole that had great consumer laws. That is changing. We're having really good luck in California, having great conversations in New York. Neither one are done yet, but when both of those states happen, then I think you'll start to see the tidal wave of, the states who are really great at protecting consumers having that influence. But right now, Maryland had a good law last year, not a great one, but a good one that got better. Maine had a great one that caps resale prices that got through last year. I think it's a 10 or 15% is the most that you can resell a ticket for. There's a bill in DC right now that looks like it's going to get through just for the District of Columbia, not federally. That one looks like it's going to happen. So we're seeing movement.
That's good to know. We talked a little bit earlier about this, about how artists and their teams or promoters raise prices to kind of capture margin, protect from scalpers. That's the pricing problem in our business. Do you think that actually helps the fan, or does it just normalize $500 tickets?
I don't think any time that we're raising prices so high it helps the fans. And I think there are people willing and able to pay those prices, but I think we'll see a long-term effect of too high a pricing. Because if you can't afford to go see that act when you're 16 years old, 18 years old, you may not keep coming back the rest of your life. Like, look at the Backstreet Boys, their Sphere residency. Like, it's unbelievable the business they're doing. If Backstreet Boys tickets were the equivalent of whatever $300 is today, when those girls who love that band were in junior high and high school, I don't think they would be coming to see the Backstreet Boys now, because they wouldn't have been able to afford to see it and they wouldn't have had that affection to the band.
Yeah.
So I think we will see some long-term damage because of these high ticket prices.
Yeah, I just like kind of a closing question, maybe to tie it all together for me, but like, and maybe this is what I was trying to go for in my last question, but if we quote unquote solve scalping, but ticket prices stay high, production costs, profit incentive, whatever it is, will the fans actually feel like they've won? And I guess the other side of that is like, what does a fair ecosystem actually look like in your mind in the concerts business?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think the fans are going to feel like they won because they're not going to feel it. I think the best way to describe it, it's like inflation. And over the last couple of years, we've had inflation. Prices have gone up. Inflation has slowed, but everybody's still angry because it costs them more money to buy a lot of those same things because you're just remembering that the price is now higher. I think if we outlawed scalping, we may at some point see a slowdown in the increase of prices, but the damage has been done as far as the fans concerned. The tickets are now extremely expensive. Like, as well as I, we're both managers. We're not going to call Dan and say, hey, can we do a lower ticket price and lower our guarantee next time we come to town? Like, that's never going to happen.
In the wave of all-in pricing, I've actually, really focused on, not huge cuts and things, but yeah, we've lowered ticket prices, especially in end of 2025, 2026.
Did you lower your guarantee or your ticket price?
Yeah, we lowered guarantees as well, too.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Literally one of the few managers that looks at the walkout of the last play and says, let's fix the market. Not every, if you got one bad market that stands out, it was like, we had one good show here 5 years ago. We've been back twice and then numbers have been trending down. Clearly we've outpriced our fans. Let's go get them back.
Yeah, and that's what we should be doing as an industry, and it's so outside of the norm. And I would hope I would do that, but I don't know that I would. It's because as a manager, you have so many other circumstances. The band needs X, and if the artist needs that, can you convince them to scale down their production to take a little less to lower the ticket price? It's very rare that an artist wants to present a less than show, but you get creative and say, let's do an underplay. Let's do a tour in rooms where you couldn't carry that production. And that's why it's special. Like there's ways to do it, but it's going to be the exception, not the norm.
Yeah. Well, Ray, this has been a fascinating conversation. I think I could talk to you about, face value exchanges and a bunch of other things, tradable equity and revocable licenses until the sun goes down. But this has been an enormously insightful and great conversation. I really appreciate you spending some time with us this evening.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Hey, this is Mike McGinley, Mitch Rose, Peter Katzis, Mike Hayes, Tony from APA,
Vince Bannon,
Deshaun Healy,
Steve Rennie, and
Rick Canny,
Sam Kinkin,
Rob McDurf. Happy to be here on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Quote of the month. The only way to achieve the impossible is to believe it is possible. Lewis Carroll, Luke.
Alice in Wonderland. Is that a quote from the fine Lewis Carroll book, Alice in Wonderland, Dan? Do you know where that's from?
I don't know if that's a pull from the book itself, but it would seem fitting.
Certainly would, as he smiles like the Cheshire Cat.
Well, we all know why he would smile.
Hey everyone, this is Cindy Leinott,
Kira Finkenberg,
Patty Ann Tarleton, Whitney Bond,
Amy Miller,
Dawn Holliday,
Marcy Allen,
Paula Palazzo,
Becca Leifer,
and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101. Promoter 101.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Friends, listeners, Randy, everybody who joined us today in the podcast, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. A special thank you to Randy Nichols, to Ray Waddell for being a part of this month's podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. If you want to catch up, send us a note, drop us a line. We're Steiny at promoter101.net.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back again on March 26th and the last Thursday of every month moving forward.
Our March episode will feature someone else. We have 3 interviews lined up, but as they are not recorded yet, let's just make it a surprise to us all.
Oh, we're looking forward to it, and we're wishing you sold-out shows for the month to come.
Cheers!
Call your mother!
Visit the buffet called Promoter 101.